Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I thank the chairman. Secretary Mayorkas, on April 28th, 2022, I ask you, quote, will you testify under oath right now? Do we have operational control, yes or no, end quote. You responded with, quote, yes, we do, period, end quote. I then asked, we have operational control of the borders? You responded, quote, yes, we do, period, end quote. Followed up, I said, I read to you the definition of operational control. I actually held up this chart, operational control as defined under the Secure Fence Act. Put it up for plain reading, plain as day. I put up the second part of the same statute, which defines operational control. Means the prevention of all unlawful entries in the United States, including entries by terrorists, other unlawful aliens, instruments of terrorism, narcotics, and other contraband. I said to you, do you stand by in your testimony that we have operational control in light of this definition? You responded with, quote, I do, period, end quote. Earlier, you testified I didn't give you a chance to finish. Yet you specifically, when asked and held up a statute defining exactly what operational control meant under the Secure Fence Act, you said, quote, I do. I believe that was purposeful. I believe you want the American people to believe we have operational control of the border when we very clearly do not. Less than a month later, in Homeland Security, you testified, quote, under that strict definition, this country has never had operational control. This year, House Homeland Security, then Border Patrol Chief Raul Ortiz testified before the Homeland Committee that DHS did not have operational control of the border, either by the statutory definition or not. Now that is an honest answer. In the Senate Judiciary Committee, shortly thereafter, you testified with respect to the definition of operational control, I do not use the definition that appears in the Secure Fence Act. And the Secure Fence Act provides statutorily that operational control is defined as preventing all unlawful entries in the United States, and by that definition, no administration has ever had operational control. If you will recall when you testified here in front of me when I asked that question, when you very clearly stated, we do have operational control, when presented with the actual definition of operational control, you didn't hesitate, you said, I do, and you in fact then referred back and said, I believe that my predecessors would have said the same thing. I asked Chad Wolf that question in this room, and Chad said, well, no, we didn't use that framing to say we have operational control. We're striving to achieve operational control, but you didn't do that. You looked straight at the American people, straight at me, straight at every person on this committee, and said, we have operational control. Why?
Congressman, 2 points. One, you did not let me complete my answer. Two,
hold on. Give me your second point. Go ahead.
Thank you. Two, the Secure Fence Act defines operational control as not a single individual crosses the border.
I'm aware. I read it, and I read it to you, and you read it, and in fact, you said, I do. You didn't hesitate. You didn't say, I do. I need to explain what I mean by I do. You said, I do, over and over again, and here's the problem with that. This is a pattern. Did you lie another time when you said on September 24th, 2021 at a press conference, quote, we know that those images painfully conjured up the worst elements of our nation's ongoing battle against systemic racism when responding to the alleged whipping incident by the Border Patrol agents who report to you. When in fact, on October 22nd, 2022, it was reported that 2.5 hours before that press conference, Marcia Espinoza, Assistant Secretary of DHS Public Affairs, emailed you and CC'd other DHS leadership, alerting you all that the photographer who took the images did not see any whipping occur, invalidating the initial claim. And it wasn't until May of this year that you corrected the record to say, well, let me just correct you right there because actually the investigation concluded the whipping did not occur. Don Rosenberg, in this very room, testified a few weeks ago that you lie. It is a perpetual pattern, and the fact is there are real people that are impacted by that. We have now had, since you testified, We have had something like 200 people a day dying from fentanyl deaths, which would amount to 90,000 people. I showed you before, when you were here, the lost voices of fentanyl, the hundreds, the thousands of Americans that continue to die, 90,000 since you came into this committee and lied to us saying we have operational control. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
Thank you. The First Amendment to the United States Constitution rests on the principle that no person or institution, including the government, has a monopoly on the truth, and that viewpoint-based suppression of speech by the government is dangerous and may even spell the death of a constitutional republic. Under the First Amendment, the government has no power to restrict expression because of its message, its ideas, its subject matter, or its content. As the Supreme Court has explained, if there is any fixed star in our constitutional constellation, it is that no official, high or petty, can prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or other matters of opinion. Labeling speech misinformation does not strip it of its First Amendment protection. That is so even if the speech is untrue, as some false statements are inevitable if there is to be an open and vigorous expression of views in public and private conversation. In refusing to carve out a First Amendment exception for false speech, the framers of our Constitution recognize the significant danger in making the government the ultimate arbiters of truth. And it is axiomatic, in the words of the Supreme Court, that the government may not induce, encourage, or promote private persons to accomplish what it constitutionally is forbidden to accomplish. Secretary Mayorkas, it was reported in May that the DHS, through the Targeted Violence and Terrorism Prevention Grant Program, is funding groups targeting conservatives and equating them to domestic terrorists. Originally intended to combat foreign terrorist organizations' operations in the U.S., it has become yet another government tool weaponized against citizens to violate First Amendment protected affiliations and speech. One grant to the University of Dayton for a program titled Prevents O hosted a seminar titled Extremism, Rhetoric, and Democratic Precarity. One of the speakers, a known Antifa member, as part of his presentation shared a pyramid of far-right radicalization, which likened the Republican Party to the Heritage Foundation, the American Conservative Union, Fox News, Breitbart News, the National Rifle Association, Prager University, Tea Party Patriots, the MAGA movement, and the pro-police Blue Lives Matter movement, and the Christian Broadcasting Network as the first steps on path leading to Nazism and militant neo-Nazism, among other appalling ideologies and groups. This presenter reportedly also taught tactics on how to pressure the removal of conservatives from platforms, and he's even quoted as saying, "A lot of things we are doing are illegal, and a lot of it involves breaking the law." Secretary Mayorkas, does the affiliation with conservative or Christian beliefs make someone a Nazi or a domestic terrorist?
Of course not.
Okay. Then if that's so, why is your agency targeting Americans who are Christians and conservatives?
We are not.
Okay. Secretary Mayorkas, when did you become aware that the University of Dayton was implementing your grant funding program to target conservatives and Christians?
It is my understanding that it is not.
When did you become, so you're not aware of that?
No, it is my understanding that it is not.
You're unaware of the information that has been produced, and have you ever seen the pyramid that it's up on the screen right now?
I learned about the individual speaker's comments, with which I profoundly disagree.
Okay, so when did you find out about the speaker's comments?
I don't quite recall, Congresswoman.
All right, well, you know what, Mr. Mayorkas, I actually really want to thank you as well for coming here today, for your performance. I have watched with absolute fascination as you have danced and dodged and lied. Yes, lied. We know you've lied, you know you've lied, but more importantly, the American public knows that you lied throughout your testimony today. And yet you believe that you and your fellow architects of the censorship industrial complex think that you should be able to determine what is and isn't true, and what is and isn't untrue. You are the walking, talking epitome of the very tyrant that our forefathers recognized would gravitate towards government service. And it is because of people like you that they drafted the First Amendment. I thank them for their foresight. I thank them for recognizing that you and people like you would do everything in your power to control speech, to control freedom, to take away our rights. And they've written a document that isn't going to allow you to do that. Unfortunately, we still have courts and judges who recognize that you don't have the power that you are attempting to take, that you do not have the right to limit our freedom of speech, our freedom of association, our right to communicate. Thank God we have the First Amendment so that we can stop you from doing what you've been doing.